your short-term goal has to align to your long-term. If it doesn't, then you got a problem, right? Because if you keep focusing on your short-term goals that are not in alignment with your long-term goal, then you're going to go way off path. And next thing you know, that long-term goal is completely unachievable. So no short-term goal should ever be achieved if it is not in alignment with a long-term goal. If it's not in alignment, then you need to rethink your long-term goal. And if you realize I can't, that long-term goal is our core to our success, then that short-term goal needs to change. Organizations too often do that. They focus on the short term because that's all the stock market cares about, right? If we talk about a publicly traded company, all they care about is the next 3 months, right? It's all about the quarter gain. They're not in it for the long term, right? You got to be in it for the long term, and then every step needs to get there.
All right, guys, welcome to the Winner Circle podcast. Today we have an interesting episode to discuss about. Dr. James Chitwood with us. He's an Army veteran, a former university and college president, and a professor. He started his career in higher education, believing he was helping others. However, as life would have it, he found it his true calling as an author and a consultant. With over 20 years of experience, Dr. Chitwood understands the importance of the right connection between how organizations run and their productivity. One right thing I like is his book, Leadership is Not Enough. The book shares his insight on how to treat employees as a valuable asset rather than liabilities. He works with companies of all sizes to create positive practices that help employees thrive. So, in this episode, we'll discuss why long term thinking is essential in business and how to bring faith into leadership and the valuable lesson Dr. Chitwood learned from his time in the military. So, this conversation will be full of inspiration and practical advice for anyone looking to build a successful organization. So, let's welcome Dr. James Chitwood to the Winner Circle.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Pleasure to be here, my friend.
All right. Good to have you on the show today. The last time we spoke about a lot of things, and the story seemed to be very, very interesting and also motivational. So, I would want you to start by sharing a bit about your early life, what motivated you to pursue a career focused on helping others.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to get into too much of my early life. We'll just say that it was chaotic. I graduated high school a drug addict. I joined the Army Infantry. If you think Army Infantry basic training's hard, try using it to get off of methamphetamines. It was an interestingly challenging time every way around. And then after that, I wanted to move forward and do something good. I've always really wanted to make a positive impact in this world to help others. I kind of stumbled into higher education, and once in it, I thought, well, this is great. I'm not selling widgets. I'm helping people with their futures and their growth. And knowledge is that one thing that nobody can ever take away from you. So I really felt that I was in the right place. Only it just never felt that way. In the end, as I was in my career, I never felt. And my wife, I married up, and my wife had been telling me to consult for a very long time. And I just kept saying, so I left higher education and I went into the startup space, and I was helping one startup org after another. And same thing, my wife's like, Jim, when are you going to just start consulting? Because you have too much to offer. If you've ever been in the startup space, there's no permanency to it, right? And so, but I just kept doing it because I thought it was helpful. And she said, Jim, you really need to go out and consult. But to do it, I had to have an original thought, Jay. I couldn't just use research tools that everybody else used to talk about organizational environments, right? Like the tools that I used for my dissertation, many of my peers would have used them to become consultants in the workplace. That wasn't enough for me. I had to have my own thought. And God gave me that aha moment when I finally released it to him and said, all right, help me figure this out. Because if this is the path, I'm lost. I can't see it. And by admitting that and allowing myself to be free to influence from God, the clarity hit me. And the idea for my book came out. And I really, really enjoy creating environments where employees thrive. I really believe the employee is the cornerstone of any organization. It's the foundational element to Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations. And so that's what brought me to this point here, Jay. Sorry, it's probably a long answer.
It's fine. It's fine. It's an interesting journey sharing how you go here. But there's another part of your journey, which is something I am looking forward to ask about. Coming from the military background, how did you switch from being a military to being a consultant? How did you switch from that? How was the transition like?
Yeah, well, I mean, number one, I think everybody should join the military, right? There's lots and lots and lots of jobs that have nothing to do with kicking in a door and getting shot at. You can go be an X-ray technician. You can go become a satellite technician. You can be a nurse, a doctor, a supply clerk. There's so many things that you can do. And what you get out of it
Mm,
is this discipline and what you spoke to, which is a focus on precision, a focus on teamwork, a focus on getting the job done and finding a way to achieve, right? And so I went straight from the Army into college. So I came from an environment where I had no college money. And so the Army was not only a way for me to learn discipline, get my head screwed on straight, it also paid for college. So I went directly into that. And it was interesting because I may have only been a few years older than my peers, but mentally I was nowhere close to them. I was already so much more mature than them. I wasn't interested in the partying and the stupidity and just being a high school kid 2.0, right? To me, it was okay. I had two jobs plus I was in the National Guard while I was a full-time student, right? And the Army taught me that there's 24 hours in a day, and you can get the work done if you focus on it, you prioritize it, and you categorize it into blocks of time. So it was the Army gave me the ability to be successful in that regard.
The last time we were speaking, we discussed about something you are currently doing, an initiative. You talk about Six Suite for Christ.
Yes, sir.
So that's one of your recent initiatives. Can you
Mhm.
tell us what led you to start this ministry and what was the core of his mission?
Yeah, Jay, great question. I never thought I would be leading any type of a Christian movement. Yes, I was actively involved in my church. Yes, I was a lector and a Eucharistic minister, and yes, I served on the parish council. But my book isn't about Jesus. It's not about Christ, right? I haven't been leading a Bible study for 25 years. When I first signed up for C-Suite for Christ, I did it because I wanted to fill my spiritual gas tank. I wanted to sit around a table with other Christian executives and have a discussion. I love church. My only disconnect with church is when the sermon ends, I'm that geek that wants to talk to everybody around me on what I just heard, right? But I can't. I have to shut up. I have to stand. I have to kneel. I have to sit. I have to do whatever I have to do. And then mass ends and I get in my car and I may or may not cut someone off getting out of the parking lot, right? And then Monday comes around and it's back to work. And so I wanted to and in the workplace, you're told there are no Christian executives. You're told that everybody is secular, which actually is not true. 70% of the population out there are fully faithful individuals, and we let the minority control the majority. And I've been fine with that for a very long time, Jay. I used words like the universe instead of God because I didn't want to offend anybody, right? I'd say happy holidays instead of Merry Christmas because I didn't want to offend anybody. And I was what I called a complacent Christian, and I was perfectly fine with that. And when I first signed up to become a member of C-Suite for Christ, I've been driving up to Wisconsin to where the home chapter is. And, I did it for me. And they looked at my background and they said, hey, we've been interested in getting a chapter in Chicago. Would you be interested? And I said, no, not my path. Right. This is not where I'm going. And then, fast forward 8 months or so, and I shake the hand of the founder after one of the meetings and I drive back home to Chicago and he calls me up on my cell and says, hey, Jim, how come we never talked about opening a chapter down in Chicago? And I said, Paul, I appreciate it, my brother, but this is not my path. However, this is now the second time I've been asked. And Jay, if there's one thing I know about God is you don't want God to have to ask you 3 times. Like, if you don't get it the second, the third one's going to come pretty hard. I like to say the first time's a whisper, second time is a voice, and the third time is a lightning bolt, or as was said last night in a conversation, bat across the head, right? Like, you don't make God ask 3 times. So on the second time, I said, listen, I'm not sure if this is my path, but I will, I'll pray, I'll discern, and I'll see. And so that was a Wednesday night, Jay. And that Saturday night, my wife and I are in this room doing one of my favorite things, our favorite things, which is sitting by a fire, having a glass of wine, chatting, playing games, being husband, wife, empty nesters, rekindling the relationship that is challenged if you have children. And then when you can redo it when they move out. There is life after children in the house anyway. So we're sitting here and she's talking to me and she goes, hey Jim, you have a full-time consulting business that pays our bills. Oh, what I left out was when Paul called me, I was talking to a consulting firm about picking up some extra work. Because if you're a consultant, it's feast or famine, right? And you always have to be wondering what's next. And so I was just going to pick up some steady side work, and it would have paid great. And so I'm in this room, and Jay, here's the funny thing: I don't remember if this is how it was worded, but this is how the Holy Spirit keeps me remembering it. She says, you've got two things on the side. You've got the full time. That pays our bills. That's our thing. You've got two things on the side. You can't do them both. One's secular, one's faith. Which are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to do the secular one because, well, one, it'll pay. This is the ministry, right? This isn't an income producer. And I know it. I got it. I got this. And she says, okay, And so by that Tuesday, that secular position is taken off of my plate. And it should have been a slam dunk. It should have been easy. And so I'm like, all right, God, you made this pretty easy. So I call up the founder, Paul Newberger, and I say, hey, Paul, I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no. Let's see where it goes. And so I just started following and going down the path. It was one green light after another. Jay, I'm a real big believer that when things work out, there's a reason. And when they don't, there's a reason. I'm not that person who says there's a wall, break through it. I'm like, why is there a wall there? Right? So anyways, all I got were green lights the whole way through. I'm humbled, man, because I don't believe I'm worthy to be leading this chapter. I interview people who are twice ordained pastors who've written books on Christ, who've been leading Bible studies for 25 years. I mean, I am humbled by the people who join this chapter and are willing to follow my lead. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm the perfect Simon, not quite the Peter of God. I don't know. What I do know is I've been called to do this, and I'm going to try to give my chapter members the best environment that they can. So again, long answer, my brother, but that's what brought me to this point.
Oh, that's great.
Hello, listeners. I want to take a quick moment to share an incredible opportunity for anyone looking to take their businesses to the next level. So if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed by the challenges of running a business, most businesses need help right now to navigate out of all this mess, all this hula baloo. So I'm going to recommend you to check out Point of View Consulting. They are based in New York City and they specialize in offering expert guidance tailored specifically to your needs. One of the things I like about them is their team. They have a lot of team members and they're dedicated to helping businesses of all sizes, whether you're small, whether you're medium, whether you're large. They will help you identify your strength and weakness. They will also develop effective strategies. For my listeners, or for the listeners of the Winner Circle podcast, you can get 30% off your first consultation by using the code Winner Circle podcast when you sign up. So whether you're a startup or you're an established company, Point of View Consulting, they offer personalized services that can help you align your objective with practical solutions. So if you're ready to unlock your business potential, you need to visit www.pointofviewconsultingimc.com and use the code Winner Circle Podcast for your special discount. So don't miss out on this chance to work with the industry expert who can provide the support you need to strive. So I'm just going to say it again. Go to www.pointofviewconsultingimc.com. When you get there, use the code Winner Circle Podcast. When you contact them, tell them Jay from Winner Circle Podcast sent you, and use the code Winner Circle Podcast for 30% off your first consultation. So take this step towards a success today. All right, see you next time.
So moving forward, I've found out that bringing faith into the business world is a powerful concept, something that not everybody can do, especially in the world we live in. We get sucked into the word, like using, instead of God, you say universe. Instead of Christ, you say this. So it's quite a very, very hard decision to make. But in your own experience so far, how can leaders integrate their faith into their daily business practices?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, let's first talk about the hardest one, which is that C-suite employee, the one sitting around a boardroom, the one who is mandated to grow that company, right? I mean, listen, the math is real simple. Your business is either growing or it is dying. Your expenses will be more next year, right? Your health insurance, people want raises, your energy price, your facilities, your paper, your coffee, everything's going to cost more next year. And if your revenue line is not beating that by a margin to allow you to reinvest in your company, then your company's not healthy and it's dying, right? And so I like to say God the Father's job around that C-suite table is to help those leaders recognize the humanity within the numbers, to recognize that all those metrics represent human output. And I like to say in my consulting business, if you focus on the numbers, you'll lose your people. If you focus on the people, you'll gain your numbers, right? So that's God the Father's job, right? Sit around that boardroom table, help people recognize the humanity within the numbers. But then you have the hardest job in the company, which is that frontline employee, the one whose job it is to work with an employee and help them hit their goals. The thing here is, I like to say Jesus is a frontline employee, is a frontline manager. His job would be to help those employees develop and grow. And in so doing, achieve the organizational performance, create an environment where there's a symbiotic relationship between that employee's growth and their goal achievement with the organization. So as they are pursuing their company's goals, they're also pursuing their personal goals. And when you can create that perfect symbiotic relationship between the person and the organization to create sustainable growth. And that's really the founding principle of capitalism as espoused by Adam Smith. It is the voluntary participation of labor. I'm sorry, I'm a total geek, so I'm going to go on this for a sec. But what it talks about is you have a labor force that comes together with a business leader, and they join in a union to create an organization, and they all prosper and grow together, right? And that's the foundation of capitalism. It's not a free market economy. It's not laissez-faire. Those are outcomes. What makes it work are the people gaining and growing alongside the company, right? Long time ago, employees were assets, and organizations invested in them, and they helped them grow. And then Jack Welch came along and employees became liabilities, and we started seeking the cheapest labor we possibly could. Companies stopped investing in their people. If you went into a bookstore at the time Jack Welch got started, every bookstore, shelves would be filled with how to be a manager, how to manage your employees. Those books are very hard to find now. All the books are about leadership. Why? Because the concept is, well, I don't actually have to manage you. I'll just lead you and you just do it. Well, that's not how it works if you're a frontline manager. You got to know how to have the hard conversations. You got to know how to have the positive conversations, right? There's so much to it. I got a whole consulting business about, but the core here is Jesus's job is to help that employee grow. And in so doing, the organization benefits. And then the Holy Spirit, well, that's your culture, right? Because we all carry the breath of God in us as our souls, right? And that is the spirit that interconnects all of us. And at the quantum level, we've already proven that there's energy that connects all life on our planet. That is an empirical truth, right? The thing here is it's not just purely science. It's where does it come from? And it comes from God, and it is the Holy Spirit. And that's what connects us. And when you invite that into your workplace, you can create a really positive, faith-filled environment. You know, I haven't used the word religion. I use the word faith because religion divides, faith unites. And I really believe that if we focus on what unites us, we as a people can all grow and prosper.
We as a people can grow and prosper. That's a very strong word there. I'm going to ask, how do you think having a strong ethical foundation influences decision making in a corporate setting?
Ooh, well, that's a deep one, Jay. Way to bring it, my friend. Well, my brother, what I would say is, you know, I'm often amazed by decisions that are made around a corporate table that people would never do in their private life, that they would never admit to doing, right? Like cutting employees in order to hit the bottom line, in order to make the stock price look good so that the executives benefit, right? You know, the stock market is not the health of a company. And yet, you know, it's like this total dichotomy in there. And it is ridiculous. And I could talk all day long about it. But if you've got a strong ethical foundation, then you're going to do good business. And good business begets good business. No organization that runs with bad business practices survives. Look at Jack Welch and what happened to GE. GE was the brand. It was the global powerhouse. This man was revered as the great guru of business. And in his environment, 10% of the employees were fired every single year and no other reason than they scored less than someone else, even if they hit their goals, even if they did what you asked them to do. The fact that they didn't do it as well as someone else. So what this created was it created an environment of fear. It created unethical business practices, right? And in the end, the company no longer exists. It's now 3 companies, and they're a fraction, they're a shell of what they used to be. Why? Because that business was run to the ground, because it wasn't run off of good, solid moral and ethical foundations.
So, in one word, foundation is key to building a sustainable business.
Yes.
So, I know there's
Here's
a.
an interesting thing, Jay. Your employees will be more invested in your growth as a company if they believe you have their back, even if they don't have the company's back, right? Even if they don't proudly wear the brand, even if they're not out there preaching your brand and supporting your company. The simple fact that they know you as a company have their back means they will perform better because they know they're in a place that is safe for them. And psychological safety is the foundation of all performance. If you have not created a psychologically safe environment, you will never get optimal performance and long-term sustainable performance out of your people.
Right, thank you for that information. It's very powerful to
Yes,
know
sir.
that foundation matters. Even also because right now, the world we live in right now, everybody's looking for cheap labels. Nobody really wanna invest in their staff, in their employee. They just want, you know what? We just want to make money because capitalism. We really don't care. You're just a number. So if you break down, we'll get another person and move on, which is something we need to worry about. So now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your military background. So I would want to know how your experience in the army shaped your understanding of leadership.
Oh, it was core and key. Here's an interesting thing about the military. We've all heard this thing in a movie, Permission to Speak Freely, sir, right? Everybody thinks that soldiers just blindly follow orders. And in the military, there's this old phrase that if your soldiers aren't complaining, you got a problem. And the problem is you. Think about that, right? Everybody thinks the military is all command and control. People are just a bunch of, mindless robots who just follow orders. It's actually not even close to the truth. Soldiers will complain. And they'll complain because they know it's safe, right? Permission to speak freely, sir, means I need to tell you what I'm thinking. And in the end, if you say too bad, go back and dig that hole. Great. I'm going to go back and dig that hole. But at least I knew I could do it, right? And so my employees, my entire life, have known that they can come up to me. They can say, hey, Jim, and I've told them, listen, if you've got something directly about me, please do it in private. If it's something about the entire org, feel free to bring it up in a large group meeting. And I'm a real big believer in large group meetings and open and transparent communication. But the core here is my team have always known that they can come to me and disagree. I've been called people's best boss. I've never been called an easy boss. Those are two drastically different things, right? And so the military taught me how to lead with humility, how to recognize that when the mission is successful, it's successful because of the team. And when the mission fails, it fails because of the leader. And so those principles of open and transparent communication and a team focused perspective have been cornerstone, foundational to my leadership. And those are core to the military.
Open and transparent communication is core.
Yes.
So thank you for that information. So now let's talk about the leadership principle principles you learned during your military service. Which one of them do you think is still useful business in the business world today?
Well, I would say what I just mentioned, which is if I'm going to narrow it down to one, it's creating a psychologically safe environment. That's most people wouldn't think the military is psychologically safe, but it absolutely is, right? Soldiers know that they can voice their concerns without fear of reprimand, that it's not going to, that the only thing that's going to stop them from getting a promotion is messing up, right? Not speaking up. That'll rarely get a person stopped. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're a total jerk, and I assume it could, but for the most part, you got to mess up to not advance. Speaking up is not part of it, and that's a core to a psychologically safe environment. Your people need to know that they can speak up without fear of reprimand or repercussions. And if I was going to nail it down to one, I'd have to say that.
All right, thank you so much for clarifying that. So I know earlier on today you talked about the importance of viewing employees as valuable assets. I know you spoke about it briefly, but I would want you to elaborate on why that mindset is so critical for long-term organization success.
Yeah, Jay, it's ironic. There is a last count $74 billion global industry on leadership development, right? And it's all about, and I've participated in this, you probably have as well, where you go to your company and you participate in some great leadership development training, right? And then 6 months later, whatever it was is lost and everybody's back to doing their own thing, right? Here's the problem with that. There's several things. Number one, your average CEO is a 5-year life cycle. Your average VP of sales has less than 2 years. So your leadership is a 2 to 5 year life cycle. So anything you do investing in your leaders is short term because within 5 years, they'll all be gone. right? And every year, 20% of your workforce is gone. And that's on the small end. So 20% of your workforce is gone. Realistically, mathematically, every 5 years, 100% of your team is turned over, right? It's not exactly that, but we'll just work with that math, right? And so anything focused on the social systems, which is what your people are, is short lived, right? If you create an environment that is foundational to supporting people, then that survives leadership changes, right? When you create policies, procedures, systems, operating environments that are there to develop your people, well, that will survive leadership changes. And one of the challenges that happen in companies is we have leaders that come in, you get a new CEO, next thing you know, you got a entire new leadership team. And what you do in the end is you tell people lower down in the chain that they'll never be a CEO because nobody in that company can ever be that company's CEO. That CEO will always come from someone else. They will always seek externally. And that is the norm now. The norm is not promoting from within. When I got started in my career, promoting from within was not only the norm, it was the expectation, right? It was get any college degree and we will develop you as an employee. And you can go from frontline all the way to the top. And by the time you got there, you know that company like the back of your hand, and you are the best CEO because you've been through it, right? And so, we have lost sight of that core principle of developing our employees as assets for our company. My uncle Roy, his favorite saying was the greatest asset of any company is the underdeveloped potential of its people, right? And that's really the core here is that everybody has value and have potential. And they might be the right person on the bus, just simply in the wrong seat, right? In the words of Good to Great. You have to find the right people to get in the bus. Once there, be willing to move them around, develop them so that they can find new things. They might have come in as an accountant because they went to college for it when they had no idea what they wanted to do, but they're actually an amazing marketer. They just never got the chance to do it, right? And so you can develop them into that role. Most companies would never do that these days because they don't have employee development for advancement as a core principle. And that's the thing about the military. The military is a training organization, first and foremost. Every moment of every day, you're either doing your job or you're training for your job in the military. And so when organizations take that same ethos, that training isn't something you do once a year to cover your HR basis. That training is your cultural norm. Well, now you can develop your people to really fulfill your organization's mission.
All right, thank you for that information. No wonder the Army is celebrating 250 years. And thanks for your service. But you know
Yes,
what?
sir.
They're celebrating it because every person who has been the general or the chief of defense staff or the term they use for it has started from the ranks. Thank you for that information, and I just hope and I'm believing all the listeners and the winners that listen to the Winner Circle podcast will know that word. That try as much as possible to invest in your staffs. It's very, very important. Just invest in them. Build them. Don't let the business die when you die.
Right.
You need
And
somebody who is
investing,
passionate.
we're not talking about foosballs and, climbing walls. We're talking about investing in their development, right? Not their enjoyment. People can enjoy outside of work. It's called work, but invest in their development. Teach your managers to be managers. Teach them how to have a hard conversation, how to have a good conversation, right? Teach them how to manage. And when you do that, and you need to have that for every level, not just your frontline manager, but also your director, because directing is different than managing, right? And your VP. Imagine a company that has CEO training. Hey, you're our new CEO. Now we're going to train you. Imagine that, right? Now you're promoted to chief revenue officer from the VP of sales. Now we're going to train you for that. Companies don't have that. But if they really want, and I mean long-term performance, I don't mean 5 years. I mean 50 to 150-year performance. If you want that, you need to have a sequential development program from employee to manager to director to VP to C-level, all the way up. And it needs to be integrated as one philosophy to develop your employees so that when they come in, they see it. Hey, wow, I can start here and end up there. Why? Because the company has invested in a development program to get me there.
All right, thank you so much. So now talking about your book. In your book, Leadership is Not Enough, you discuss the connection between organizational systems and productivity. So I would want to ask, what prompted you to write about that? And what is the key takeaways for leaders?
Yeah. That was the great aha moment, the clarity of God and the Holy Spirit when the book all made sense. Two things clicked in my head. Number one was my experience in the military, and number two was my experience in a company. And I saw the military for what it really is a training company, training organization. Everybody talks about the military is built upon great leaders. It's actually not. Great leaders are the outcome of a system that produced them, right? The military is a system that develops people. And the outcome of that are some really amazing leaders, right? They are the outcome of a system that produced them. And I worked for an organization that had a very robust training program. Again, all the way up the org. It had this. And I saw those two things really coalesce and come together. And what I realized was the reason this national organization that grew across the nation incredibly successfully was able to do that is because they had basically thought like a franchise. They had documented everything. They had created systems, SOPs, standard operating procedures for everything. And they developed training programs around it so that you could go into a new state. And I opened up multiple states for this organization. You could do that very successfully, regardless of who you were as a leader. Yeah, sure. If you were a great leader, you'd likely get some better results than somebody who was an okay leader. The okay person did just fine. Why did they do just fine? Because there was a system that allowed them to do that, right?
All right. So, talking about leadership, I know that many leaders struggle with balancing immediate needs and long-term goals. What strategies do you recommend for achieving that balance?
Well, you have to align them. Your short-term goal has to align to your long-term. If it doesn't, then you got a problem, right? Because if you keep focusing on your short-term goals that are not in alignment with your long-term goal, then you're going to go way off path. And next thing you know, that long-term goal is completely unachievable. So no short-term goal should ever be achieved if it is not in alignment with a long-term goal. If it's not in alignment, then you need to rethink your long-term goal. And if you realize I can't, that long-term goal is our core to our success, then that short-term goal needs to change. Organizations too often do that. They focus on the short term because that's all the stock market cares about, right? If we talk about a publicly traded company, all they care about is the next 3 months, right? It's all about the quarter gain. They're not in it for the long term, right? You got to be in it for the long term, and then every step needs to get there. My sister used to work in alternative fuel research for Toyota, and she worked with nations across the globe. And I was talking about energy policy in America, and she goes, Jim, the problem is we have a 4-year energy policy in this country. I talk to countries that have 1,000-year energy policies, right? Everything they do today is to support 1,000 years from now, Jim. So imagine a company that says we won't do anything if it doesn't support our 150-year business plan or our growth trajectory, right? And so you have to think about that short term. If it doesn't align with your long term, you got a real problem. It's either your long term's wrong or your short term is it's a misdirection. You're getting caught up in some shiny, thing that is taking your focus away from where it needs to be.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So, let's go further a little bit as we go to the main point, the core area now. As someone who has transitioned through various roles, what's one of the most challenging moments in your career and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. I remember once when I first became a manager, someone said, Jim, congratulations. You walked through the door. Your life will never be the same. You are now in management, and it's a very lonely place to be because your employees are no longer your friends. I mean, you go from being a peer to now being a manager. And so you cannot, you can have, and don't get me wrong, I have lots of people who worked for me who are my friends, but at that moment, you have to be willing to fire someone. And that's a different mentality, right? I remember once I was in a meeting and I was asking some really hard questions of my head of finance. And he got all frustrated and mad at me. And I said, listen, I have to be asking you these questions. This is my job. You recognize that, right? This isn't personal. And he calmed down and he sat down and we had a great conversation there, right? And so I would just say that moment of realization that you have to be willing to fire the person you're in a conversation with is a hard realization for people to make. And some managers can never get there. You can be kind and love someone and not tell them they're right at the exact same time.
You're right. Leadership often involves difficult decisions. So now that you talked about having to fire somebody, especially when you get into the managerial role. How do you approach making tough calls, especially when there's a possibility of negative backlash?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that I've always considered it a failure on my part as a leader if I have to fire someone, because we should have had so many transparent conversations about their development and goal achievement that they know I'm in their corner and they know they can't get it done. And so they positively, willingly move on. And I've had that happen dozens and dozens and dozens of times. The number of people I've had to fire is less than one hand. So, to me, the leader has to be willing to make the hard call and have the conversation with the employee. I do it all the time and say, listen, here's the full picture. Here's why this decision is being made. You fit in over here, and I understand that this is your position. You got to look at the whole picture. And unfortunately, the whole picture means this isn't really going to work out for you the way you want. But if you've been open, honest, and transparent, and you've created psychological safety so that the person knows that they can push back without fear of repercussion, you've created the right environment. But again, as that leader, you have to be comfortable having those hard conversations and being transparent about it. So many people they just want to be liked. The problem I have with the whole servant leader concept is, unfortunately, that's really neat, but lots and lots and lots of times you can't serve people by being kind. You serve people by being transparent. Now, I'm not saying be cruel or mean or demeaning or anything like that, but there's a real big difference between not telling somebody the truth because you don't want to hurt their feelings and being transparent and saying, this is our truth. We are in this together. I feel you, my brother, but this is what we got to do and why.
Not being transparent is bad. So it's just good to be transparent. So as we begin to wrap up, for leaders who are new to integrating faith into their work, what would you say are the first steps they can take to start this journey?
I would say the first step is a heck of a lot of prayer, right? Start every day in prayer. Don't let this be the first thing you touch, right? Like, start your morning in quiet and prayer. And it'll really help get your mind in the right place as you walk into the workplace. I've always been this leader who prior to my decision to lean into C-suite and lean into openly, boldly professing my faith, back in the time when I used words like the universe, one of my habits was to, when someone says, hey, what do you think? Even if I had the answer, I'd say, I'm not sure. What do you think? Right? Because I want to draw that out of them. I want them thinking. I want them involved in decision making. And they may have a great solution I hadn't even thought about, and I wouldn't know that if I didn't ask. So that was my cornerstone. I always ask people. They always knew that I'm going to come back to them and say, hey, what do you think? So people got in the habit of saying, okay, this is what I think, blah, blah. Now I'm going to change that to be, you know what? I'm not sure. Let me pray on that. What do you think? Right? By just showing the person, hey, I have faith. And I'm going to ask God, I got some ideas, but I'd love to hear what you think. That changes the dynamic of that situation altogether. And what you're doing is you're letting the person know that you have faith, that you don't believe you're the one who has all the answers, and you want them involved in decision making as well. I'd say that's a great place to start.
Thank you so much. That's a great place to start. So, and in all our conversation today, you emphasized on creating an environment where employees can thrive, which is one of the words I heard you say a lot. So, what practical steps should companies?
Hey, winners, as we continue our journey together today, I want to share something truly special with you. Over the years, I've had the privilege of coaching countless business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, guiding them to achieve breakthrough results and unlocking their full potential. So I'm opening up just 4 slots for my monthly business coaching program. That's right, 4 slots. After being fully booked for the past 3 years, if you're ready to elevate your business with personalized guidance, proven strategy, and a supportive community, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, refine your vision, and achieve your goals. So if you're committed to taking your business to the next level, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me directly at Jay at winnercirclewithj.com and discuss how we can work together to build the future your business deserves. So don't wait. This is your moment. Join Winner Circle and let's embark on this transformative journey towards success together. And now let's dive back into today's episode.
Take to create such an environment?
Great question. I love the practical application question, Jay. Number one, create a development program so that your employees have a training, make training part of your ethos, right? Make it a cultural norm, not the thing you do once a year to check an HR box, but have a real systematic training program to take an employee from frontline manager all the way to the C-suite, right? Number two, have a clear and transparent accountability system. Too many small companies have other duties as assigned, and employees have no idea what their clear accountability metrics are. And they go into an annual review completely unaware of the outcome. No employee should go into an annual review not already knowing the outcome. Why? Because you've been working with them the whole way through with a clear and transparent accountability system. Number three, you have to have a good, solid recognition program. And I mean more than trips and, food and that kind of thing. And you need to have a recognition system that is equitable across the board, right? If the only people getting to go to Tahiti on a trip are your salespeople and your accountants or your programmers never get good recognition, well, you're going to create an environment where it's not a positive, everybody's in it together. Number two, that recognition system has to have the ability for peer-to-peer and departmental recognition. Why? Listen, a pat on the back from a boss goes a long way. An employee standing up in a meeting and saying, hey, I could not have got my job done if it wasn't for Jay, and let's recognize him for that, man, that goes further than anything will, right? Because that builds social bonds, and social bonds are a cornerstone to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the foundation to an organization's performance. Lastly, it's communication, man. You got to have open, transparent, three-way communication, not just top to the bottom, also bottom to the top, and then also across the organization. You have to have a three-way communication program, and it has to be clear and transparent. If you've accomplished those four things, then you've built the foundations to a strong performance environment.
Yeah, definitely. So to wrap up our conversation, what lasting message do you hope listeners take away regarding effective leadership and the role of faith in their professional lives?
Number one, we'll talk on the faith one. Recognize that any successes you have are gifts given to you by God. Start giving glory to God at work. Start say, hey, next time someone says great job, say, hey, all glory be to God. I'm just trying to use the gifts that I was given, right? Do that openly and see the reactions. It'll be awesome. And then you need to create a psychologically safe environment. That's cornerstone to performance. If your people aren't comfortable telling you what they think, you'll never get the best out of them. So do those two things, and that's a great place to start.
Before we round up, do you have any message you want to say to our listeners? How can they reach out to you, especially for people who want to join the C-Suite program?
Find C-Suite at chicago.csuiteforchrist.com. You can find me online, LinkedIn, of course, Dr. James Chitwood. I have a website, drjameschitwood.com. And then my book is called Leadership is Not Enough. You can find that at leadershipisnotenough.com.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to say a special thank you for sharing your incredible journey and also your insight on creating a sustainable long-term result in business. And your wisdom on treating employees as valuable assets and also the importance of long-term thinking is a powerful reminder of how we can all lead with purpose and faith. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I'm sure a lot of listeners, a lot of CEOs listening to this show will pick one or two things to emulate in their business. So for the listeners, if you found today's conversation valuable, please consider subscribing to our podcast and sharing it with your network. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on upcoming episodes and insight from our guests. So remember, in the pursuit of success, it's not just about the wins we achieve today, but the lasting impact we create for tomorrow. Remember the word foundation. Foundation is key. So thank you for being part of the Winner Circle. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Keep striving for excellence and embrace the journey of leadership. Remember the word, faith forward. All right, see you next time. Have a nice day, guys.
Amen, Jay.